3, 2, 1.
Hi, and welcome to...
You haven't seen what?
Where it's been so long that we can barely remember what the podcast is about and can't help but laugh at ourselves because of it.
No, I found the tagline. It's on Instagram, and it's a couple's quest to rectify the wrongs of their partner never seeing culturally relevant movies.
It's because we misplaced the Post-it note that it was written on.
Really? Why do you have to put us out there like we're super budget?
On blast.
On blast. Thanks so much for that, Parry, my wonderful husband.
Indeed.
And I'm Joelle.
And I'm Parry.
I already said your name.
And I'm still Parry.
Yes, all 40 plus years of you.
Oh, are you commenting that maybe I forgot that you said my name within 5 seconds?
No, if I really wanted to go that far, I'd be like, well, you're closer to 50 than you are to 40.
That is what hurts me. You know that.
I know, deeply in your soul, along with all of those graying hairs.
Look, my only comfort in getting older is that, John Hodgman
you married
reminds
an awesome
me
wife?
that, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
That is exactly what it is. And John Hodgman reminds me that we're all headed in that direction.
We already talked about Judge John Hodgman last time. I'm not talking about Judge John Hodgman this time. I love you, Judge John Hodgman and Jean Grey, but I cannot talk about you again this time.
Oh, well.
Even though we just did.
He'll come up again at some point.
I'm sure he will.
What I would like to mention this time as we begin the podcast, because it's been a while since we recorded an episode.
I mean, if those replaying it's not going to feel like it's been a while.
No, to them, time has magically passed.
So yes, all of our billion listeners out there need to know that it's been crazy in our house. Yes?
That's because telepathically I've been hearing them asking where we've been because we haven't been appearing in their feed.
Editable moment right now. No one needs to freaking know.
So
we've been a little bit busy. We were at a baking convention in South Florida.
Yep, because besides being a PhD candidate and podcast personality, Joelle also makes a fabulous baking implement.
Yes, it's a baking tool, essentially. Mm-hmm. It's a fancy toothpick.
It's a bubble popper, known as a scribe. But they're blingy and awesome and attracted a hell of a lot of attention. Well, you can do lots of things with it.
I know. We don't need to go through the whole rundown. It's a baking tool. If you're into vinyl lettering, you should also check it out. That company is Sweetie's Tasty Treats. We are on Instagram and Facebook and all that jazz. Or if you're interested, just drop us a line and we'll let you know. But yeah, so we peddled wares at the baking convention and talked to Yolanda Gamp, who is an amazing cake artist, YouTuber. She's just phenomenal. And we were hanging out with some really cool cookiers, like You Can Call Me Sweetie, Sandy. She's always awesome. And
makes amazingly decorated cookies. She paints very lifelike pictures on them, often Disney, but all kinds of different things. She can pretty much do whatever you want on a cookie.
Pretty much. And she teaches you actually how to do it. So that's the awesomeness of it. And then we hung out with, Avalon Cakes. And she's also an amazing cake decorator.
Avalon and Zach.
And teacher and tool maker as well. And, Sprinkles. Our folks over at Sprinkle Pop. We love them.
And yes, Liz and Sean over at Sprinkle Pop. So now, who are we connecting to for the awesome 80s?
So, wow. In the baking world, so it's interesting. So you have the podcast world and everything has its own little separate entity. But in this case, we're actually mixing it up with the Cake Bar Show. And that's put on by Joyce and Cass, and they are just amazing artists, wafer paper designers, food realist bakers.
Yes.
And designers.
Look them up immediately.
It's amazing. So that's actually happening later on, I think in July. And so You Haven't Seen What is going to be part of their VIP swag bags. That's really awesome.
And they are Toxic Sweets, is that correct?
Toxic Sweets and Cakes and Crafts by Cass. I believe that's right. So, but if you also look up the Cake Bar Show, you'll be able to go ahead and check that out as
Awesome.
well. And they're doing an 80s theme this year, so it's only appropriate that we were a part of it.
And they're very cool and fun. So, and just one other mention from this show. Now, first of all, you know, there are parts of us that we bury deeply and think that we're never going to have to show the world again. But what I found during this event was that my retail self came clawing its way back to the surface as I was hawking the wares and pouncing on people in the hallway to be, hey, look at what we've got, check it out. And I almost could not believe myself that I was so wild-eyed about selling scribes. It was like I was selling Apple computers again.
I mean, well, you're trying to pay for our rent. So
well, yes.
It's all relative, you know?
It was fun, but it was frightening even to me that those things came back to the surface so quickly.
Well, you're a people person, and people like talking to you, and you can sell ice to freaking Eskimos all the time. So I'm just in the back like, hi, I'm just the person who puts it together. But he's the awesome person that you want to talk to.
But, you know, it's fun to do that because you meet all these fun people. And one that it was kind of out of left field that we met a couple of interesting folks there at Nerdy Novelty Designs. It fit right in, but they had kind of a corner on a market there that I feel like they could be at all kinds of different conventions, megacons, comic-cons, whatever, as well as the baking world, in that they make kitchen items like
oven mitts,
and they're sci-fi themed, movie themed. So they have Star Trek and Star Wars, old Star Trek comics and Princess Bride stuff, and all on an oven mitt.
Right. So who are they again?
They are Nerdy Novelty Designs. It's Sonia and oh gosh, was it Adam, I think. So, but they were very cool and fun, and we had a long conversation
That's right.
about...
I let you out of the booth.
Yes.
I was in the booth still.
And within 5 minutes of being out of the booth, I was having a conversation about Star Wars prequels versus standalones. So it was a very, very fascinating 15 minutes that I got to be out of the booth.
At a baking convention, so you just never know what really is going to come up. But really, I think that was part of our away time, but we definitely did some 80s awesomeness. We saw David Byrne at Shaky Knees in Atlanta.
Yes.
That was pretty awesome. You and your white people.
Shaky Knees was definitely like 99.8% white.
Most music festivals are, I would say. It's interesting that way, and that there's some diversity somewhat, because no one's truly pure anymore. Not really.
Well, and admittedly, when you put together a group of artists that are David Byrne, Tenacious D,
Queens of the Stone Age,
right? Nathaniel Ratcliffe and the Night Sweats.
I love Nathaniel Ratcliffe. And the Night Sweats.
I enjoyed them all. I loved them all. But the crowd that is going to be attending
is going to be Caucasian.
Right.
Much like most of our listeners. That's okay. I'm cool with that.
I don't even know where to go with it.
I don't even know where to go with that either. Except for, hey, we're talking about ruthless people today. That's a whole lot of white people want to kill each other. So I guess that's how that fits.
Yeah, actually, there may not be anyone of color in this entire movie.
I would agree with you. Oh, is that one of our bads? I don't know.
That might be a bad.
We're ahead of ourselves. So let's go ahead and head into the synopsis. Is there anything else you wanted to cover about our crazy trips out?
We also saw Anita Baker,
yes,
who was an amazing piece of the 80s, and we're balancing out the whiteness of Shaky Knees with Anita Baker alone balanced out all of the predominantly white acts at Shaky Knees.
Oh, because of her level of talent? I would agree with you.
Yes, her level of awesomeness.
Yes, I would agree with you.
It is the rare artist to make a venue as large as the one we saw her in feel like she is talking and singing to everyone in the audience. She made it feel like an intimate setting, even though there were a couple thousand people in this room.
That's because she's talented.
She's talented and just extraordinary as a performer and as seemingly a person. I don't know her personally, sadly.
Look, Auntie Anita can do no wrong. I'm just letting you know that right now. And if you don't know Anita Baker, I'm sorry, number one. My mother used to play it for me on a cassette tape on the way to school, and we wore that thing out. So this is the one that you want to go ahead and pick up. You want to pick up Anita Baker's Rapture album, and then you want to go ahead and sing it as loud as you possibly can. And let that inner black woman come out inside of you. I'm just saying.
Even I could possibly let my inner black woman out.
You did.
I did at the show, yes.
You did.
I also have to note about the show that we had tickets in front of the mayor. So the mayor's people just weren't on it. They were behind us.
Why? No, you can't call people out like that. You don't know what was happening.
I never said what
Maybe her
city.
friends did not want to pay the extra money to go up closer. You don't know.
Well, that's because we had white people passing out in the front row because they drank too much. So maybe they just knew better and didn't want to be up there with all that.
Okay, but now do we sound like our version of good, bad, and ugly because we're talking about white people versus black people?
Well, being as I'm a white
Or we're
person
talking about-
and you're Chinese Jamaican, we kind of balance this out well, so we can have this conversation.
We can. I don't know.
But the conversation we need to have is
about Ruthless People.
Indeed, Ruthless People, which is a movie that I don't...
Am I giving the synopsis? No? You're just walking all over my territory?
I just wanted to say yes, I am.
Okay, thank you for
I'm a white
recognizing.
male and my privilege
Your
is
privilege is
getting the
freaking
better of me
rampant
right now.
now.
I will hold my thoughts until later. Please continue.
So our synopsis for Ruthless People, if you haven't seen it, it came out in 1986. So rich dude dicks over designer's hubby, kidnaps rich dude's wife, but unbeknownst to them, the rich dude was already trying to kill his even richer wife and run off with his mistress. So blackmail, sex, kidnapping, and murder. So my favorite quote from the movie is, "Oh my God, I've been abducted by Huey and Dewey."
And I really think that I've been kidnapped by Kmart.
I know.
Takes the cake on that one. I think that's the one.
That's the podcast title.
I think it is.
Fine. You get it only because it's Kmart and they're going bye-bye.
Yeah, that could be added to the list of anachronistic items in the movie. Kmart, payphones, stamps that you lick. You know, I just picture millennials seeing someone do that and going, why doesn't it stick to their tongue? It's a sticker. You don't put it in your mouth.
Oh, boy.
You know, or as my mother used to call them, pressure-sensitive stamps. Just a fancy way of saying it's a sticker.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
Karen. Oh, Karen. So I guess you can go ahead and say whatever you were going to say right before you were interrupting my synopsis.
Well, what I was going to say is that I am the one who this movie was being shown to, as supposedly I have not seen it. But I kept feeling like I was having deja vu, like maybe I had seen it, pieces of it. I don't know if it's like the ultimate 80s movie Mandela effect, that it's just a movie that is so familiar that even if you haven't seen it, you feel like you have. But I don't think I had seen it in its entirety. So the pieces that felt familiar, maybe it's just because Judge Reinhold always seems like exactly the same person no matter what movie he's in.
He is.
And he does it well. He's perfect in this part, but maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was the Reinhold convergence.
I mean, also Danny DeVito at that time, Bette Midler at that time. They were in a bunch of movies.
Yes.
So at some point, you're kind of like, okay, we're here again, a little bit. However, I will have to say that this movie all by itself is really just the best of the 80s. It's the best of Bette Midler at that time, I feel like. Unless you're going for a super sad Bette Midler, then you see Beaches. But ultimately, it's like the best of Bette Midler. I think it's some of the best performances by Danny DeVito and his over-the-topness. Mm-hmm. I will not say it's the best performance of Helen Slater because we covered that last week in The Legend of Billie Jean. And if you haven't seen it by now, shame, shame, shame.
Although she does do a great job of not being Billie Jean.
Correct, which means that the girl can act. Mm-hmm. Or sorry, woman. Jeez. So the woman can act.
It's okay. You can say that. I can't say that.
Correct. That's no one should really say it. Let's not walk that fine line. No one should really say it. But she can act, and it's pretty great. Even her role in the entire movie. So we got all of that, and then we got like Bill Pullman, and we got Judge Reinhold, and it's just a really great recipe of comedic humor happening.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, not having seen it, much like I said after Flashdance, I feel like I didn't fully experience the 80s without it because it is truly ultimate 80s in its look and its feel, its casting, its pacing. There's so many pieces to it that feel very much like my nostalgic view of the 80s. That's how it feels to me. It very much wrapped around me that way.
So what were some of your favorite scenes, do you think?
Well, honestly, just about any scene with Danny DeVito was fantastic because he has this amazing way to chew the scenery just enough to be entertaining, but not entirely over the top. He can go there if you need him to, but he was just wonderful to dislike. And it's hard to like and dislike someone at the same time as your villain in your movie, and he was great as that. But I also have to say that Bette Midler, she was so hateable, and then later so much more likable. And I think one of my favorite scenes, again, Judge Reinhold. He is so good at playing this extremely virtuous person who doesn't really want to be and tries to be bad, but isn't very good at being bad because it's just not him. And maybe that's because I relate to that character well. But
No, you're evil to the core.
oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Your
I appreciate
soul
that.
is super black.
Good.
Yeah.
Someone once called me a nihilist. I appreciated that. But are you nodding your head? Really? And you still married me, huh? Did you know that when you married me?
I'll fess up. I did not know your soul was that dark.
Well, you've helped.
I thought mine was a whole lot darker at the time, unbeknownst to everyone. I'm the one that like shoots out rainbows and candy and shit.
And people think that about me.
Yes, they think that you're the rainbow and I'm the little black cloud. But in reality, it's really reversed.
It is, but that's why we work together so well, is that people just have a complete misperception, and then we can just run circles around them that way.
I guess. Oh, my gosh.
So I think my favorite scene, what were you going to say?
Oh, my gosh. Still on the favorite scene? Freaking 10 years later.
And, oh, you know what? I might be jumping into my good here.
No. Don't jump into your good. I'm just asking you what your favorite scenes were, or surprising scenes, or anything like that.
I think one thing about it was that the house... Danny DeVito.
Oh, that decor was amazing.
The stone residence was just wild, and the furniture in it was 80s to such an extreme that it almost felt like when someone makes a movie now and sets it in the 80s and they go a little too far in the set decoration and the production design, and it just looks too much. Kind of like, what was it? Time Machine, Hot Tub, what
Hot Tub Time Machine?
Yeah, they just went way too far in just 80s-ing it up like crazy, and I know that was the idea, but it just felt like too much at points.
Oh yeah, whoever did the set design is brilliant.
And I found out, actually, I did not know this, that the furniture, especially that freaking table by their pool, that amazing, had all the little circles and triangles and all kinds of things in it, but that style is called Memphis, is the name of that furniture style.
Of course you found that out.
And apparently it's having a revival right now, and so pieces are going for like tens of thousands of dollars.
Stop it.
For these Memphis design furniture.
Lying.
I maybe.
Okay.
You know, it's on the internet, therefore I may be lying and not even know it, because fake news about Memphis furniture.
I mean, did you find that on Wikipedia?
It's all fake news unless I made it up myself, and then it must be true.
Oh, no, I think you're actually right.
Uh-huh. For once.
It's going for... Oh, David Bowie had a lot of Memphis furniture. Did you know that?
See, this is where the convergence of the universe comes together, because we just saw the David Bowie exhibit in Brooklyn, which
was freaking amazing.
Whether or not you're even a Bowie fan...
Because I wasn't a fan before I walked into the museum, but I left feeling really bad that I did not know more before.
I would say that even a pretty big Bowie fan would come out having learned at least one or two things they did not know. The exhibit was so thorough, and it starts out early childhood, a very simple design to the exhibits, and as it goes along, it gets more and more elaborate, and the rooms get bigger or angled in a different way, and it really follows his career, and sometimes it loops back on itself. It's an amazing design to the whole exhibit, and extremely educational and entertaining, and just fun and fascinating. So whether or not, again, you're a hardcore Bowie fan, there's something that you can get out of really just coming to understand what a transformational career he had in terms of pop culture and music, and how he really transcended a lot of the trends of the time and created his own. And
how did we get onto Bowie?
Sorry, I got deep into Memphis furniture.
No. This came from favorite scenes. Like, okay, let's talk about favorite scenes. You're so off track.
I'm deeply off track.
You're so off track. So let's just talk about, first of all, this is when the credits were really amazing.
The credits are great.
The animated credits at the very beginning were just so 80s awesome. I can't even begin to explain it. You should see it just for the freaking credits.
They're like an animated version of Memphis furniture.
Yes, exactly.
Because they actually reminded me.
No one really understands what Memphis furniture is. You guys Google it.
Yeah, now.
It's like Art Deco meets crack. I don't know. That's a pretty good way of phrasing it.
At the pinnacle of the 80s. So lots of colorful blues and reds and yellows.
Right. So it's like Art Deco meets the 50s meets crack. That's kind of how that goes. Yeah, that's totally what it is.
Well, it is when the crack epidemic was getting going.
Yes, that's the only reason why you buy that uncomfortable ass furniture.
But you couldn't afford it if you were a crack dealer.
No, you could afford it if you're probably buying cocaine. Okay, so maybe it's a coked out 1950s/80s design.
I guess crack was a little later as it was getting going. But
I think maybe when you designed it, you were on crack and you had to have been on cocaine in order to appreciate it.
In order to spend the exorbitant amounts to
get it.
And that's why it's so perfect in the Stone residence, is because it is, first of all, it's a huge contrast to where they take Bette Midler after they kidnap her with their very simple, basic house,
country style house,
and to the point where they're defending their basement because she's making fun of it. One of my favorite scenes is she's just lambasting their decor in their basement, and they're like defending their basement. But the furniture really exemplified the excess and decadence of the time period, and so it really summed that up well to have the house full of those items. Exactly.
I think my other favorite scenes are scenes where like Bette Midler is trying to get away, and it's just a whole bunch of physical humor with her and Judge Reinhold. It's just great. Everything just plays out so not what you'd expect all at the same time. Even rewatching it for me, I was like, wow, this movie is still crazy as I ever thought it was. And then let's not forget the sex in the car moments.
Yes.
Oh, do you want to use that for something else?
No.
Is that part of... Wait, we're at good, bad, and the ugly. So if that's where you want to go, that's where we can go.
Well, before that, actually, I was going to say that those cartoon intros were very reminiscent of Savage Steve Holland films like One Crazy Summer, and especially I Want My $2. What is it?
Are you really asking me quotes from Better Off Dead right now? Go fuck yourself.
Yes, Better Off Dead's intro, it does share some of the same DNA, it feels like.
If I were just a little bit older, John Cusack would be here instead of you. I'm just saying. If I were just a little bit older.
John Cusack would be sitting here doing a podcast instead of having his career that he has?
No, he would be having the career that he has and doing a podcast. That would be the beauty of it.
Oh, with you?
With me.
Okay. I could deal with that. I mean,
just remember that when we go see him in June.
I'll be sure to mention it to him specifically.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
So you were going to talk about the sex scene, and what I want to say before that is that what the movie has the feel almost of a stage play in some ways, in that a lot of plays, they kind of had those misunderstandings that go back and forth and build and get more confusing because more people are misunderstanding what's going on. And then they reach that crescendo, and then everything starts to clarify, and everyone starts to understand what's been happening. And then the humor has been in the building to that, but also in everyone's realization of what idiots they've been. And that misunderstanding that happens throughout, having to do with the tape and the sex scene, I thought was really brilliant structuring in a comic sense. Because the film is actually very simple. It's very basic overall. It just has a really straightforward story.
Really. It has a straightforward story, but then you have like a couple of double crossings happening.
I think what I mean is that the subtext is fairly obvious in terms of rich and poor, and rich sometimes getting there by stealing from the poor and things like that. But overall, it's just a fun movie in a very straightforward way, but not in a insulting to your intelligence kind of way.
Yeah, it's a comedy.
It is, and a well done one.
Yeah, popcorn comedy.
Exactly. But again, not one that makes you feel like I paid for this. You generally come out going, I had a great escapist couple hours, and it was just pure fun.
Exactly. So that random sex scene.
Yes, escapist movie with some very loud sex.
There was what was that? Oh no, it was like a dustbuster. Wait, that was the one. Wait, there's multiple sex scenes.
The dustbuster has nothing to do with the loud sex too. That's the best part.
No, it was all loud. The dustbuster had to do with when Bill Pullman was in there. I didn't understand the dustbuster. What would you be doing with a dust? Maybe I'm just too vanilla. What would you be doing with a dustbuster in bed? I don't even understand that. That's number one.
It's either a reference to something very specific that was in the news or something at that time, or it's just meant to be silly and confusing. And that's what I'm going to skew toward, is I think they're just being...
I know, but they could have done so much other things that would have been silly and confusing.
Because they never really show what he's doing with the dustbuster. He's always just kind of...
Bill Pullman, what were you doing with that dustbuster?
Can you please tell us what the dustbuster...
Or Carol Dodsworth. Well, I'm sorry, Carol is who she was playing, but Anita Morris...
She's dead.
Is dead. Shit.
Yeah, so we can't ask her.
We can't ask her. Bill Pullman.
Unless we have a seance.
I mean, we could. Bill Pullman, what were you doing with that dustbuster? And is that why Anita Morris is dead?
Oh.
Sorry. I mean...
Yikes.
I'm just asking.
Death by dustbuster?
That's gross. What are you doing with that dustbuster?
He would come out
I can't even say it.
He would come out from under the sheets, and he'd have the dustbuster in hand and a sly, devious look on his face. And I do have to say, Bill Pullman was playing sort of a lobotomized version of Lone Star from Spaceballs, but he has the same sort of blonde bleach hair, and it's like an early version of Lone Star. He's kind of working on Lone Star's dumber moments in this, but yeah, the dustbuster... I have no clue what it represented, but it represented something dirty, obviously.
I guess.
Either that or he was just really OCD and needed to be sure the bed was clean after they ate like cookies and Cheetos in bed together.
No. No, that's your OCD. That's not his. But I would think I saw this on either cable or VHS, so I'm sure it came out not too long after this is when I saw it. So probably it came out in 86. So I'm thinking I saw it 87, 88, which would put me at about 10-ish, 11-ish, maybe 12-ish.
Still too young.
Still way too young.
Did you see this at a sleepover?
No, with my mama.
In the theater?
No, at home. You did not fucking listen to me right now.
On VHS cassette?
Yes, either on VHS or HBO or some crap like that. I'm pretty sure we had a very big love story going on with everything Bette Midler did and Danny DeVito, and it was just funny. And adults always feel like all these sex scenes will go above, their children's heads, which it did at the time. I just kind of didn't understand the reference, but the car scene was a little bit really graphic because her boobies are out.
Did you understand that the whole implication of the sex scene to the entire movie, the fact that Bill Pullman is filming it? And then...
Yes, I did understand that was going on.
Okay.
I did understand that they were doing naughty bits and that he was trying to blackmail. They were trying to blackmail Danny DeVito because they thought that he killed his wife, but he didn't kill his wife.
And that...
Yes, so I understood. I understood that. I just might not have been able to comprehend what type of... I guess I would have been able to because I would have taken health by then. That's not true. I understand exactly what was going on.
Well, that scene, you know, Bill Pullman is out there looking like Clayton Rohner from his character from April Fool's Day with the VHS recorder that straps onto your back and the separate camera. And stop eating the Swedish fish while we're recording. Swedish fish. I have an obsessive here who needs help. I need to put a hotline number on the back of your packages.
I'm hungry.
Well, so in this scene that he's filming, because of course I'm so distracted by the Swedish fish.
Sucker.
I don't even like them that much.
Sucker.
So, of course, what has happened is that
of course,
Helen Slater
of course,
Helen Slater and Judge Reinhold,
Mr. Ed,
have kidnapped Bette Midler.
We already said that.
Yes, well they've kidnapped her, but because he stole her design for spandex miniskirts, which of course,
Sam Stone.
What else could it be but spandex miniskirts?
That's right. He's a spandex miniskirt king.
That's right, the king. So he is planning to kill his wife, and so his mistress knows this, and she has her lover, which is Bill Pullman. So she knows where he's going to go to do the deed or to dispose of the body. And so she sends Bill Pullman to go and film the body disposal. But Danny DeVito, now realizing his wife has been kidnapped, doesn't need to kill her. And so the car that pulls up is actually what turns out to be a police chief and a hooker in the car. And he wants loud sex. And so the screaming...
He wants her to be loud.
Yes. And so the screaming makes Bill Pullman think that she's being murdered and he can't watch, and so he films it and is unable to watch, and so he doesn't know she hasn't been killed. And so that's the big misunderstanding, is that, you know, they're sending the tape to the police and trying to blackmail
Bill Pullman
DeVito.
also doesn't know what Sam Stone looks like either.
Right. And
so it's dumb.
And I do have to make a little note that the person who played the Lady of the Night, Janine Bisignano, she actually was married to Michael Madsen for a period, and kind of makes sense. I don't know. I feel like Michael Madsen has a type, and kind of like Charlie Sheen. They've just got a type, and I feel like she fit right into
You're
that.
Calling everyone out, aren't you? Just today. It's really freaking bad. Okay, moving on to the good, the bad, and the ugly.
She was in an episode of TJ Hooker, too.
We've moved on now. We've moved on. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay.
What's your good, Parry? What's your good?
My good is just about any scene in the movie with Judge Reinhold. The scene in particular where he's trying to prove how ruthless he is while he's saving a spider. He's like picking the spider up with a napkin. He's talking about how they have to be ruthless. They're desperate people. They have to really be ruthless about this. And he's picking up the spider and saving it and putting it outside. And then he goes back out and stomps it to prove how hard he is. That was a great scene. Also, the scene where he's trying to sell the speaker system to the kid, the speaker system known as the Dominator X1, which sounds like some kind of vibrator. But it looks like the speaker...
What vibrator have you seen?
I don't know. I went in a store once.
Oh, God, no. No, not appropriate.
In L.A.
Stop while you're ahead.
Every other store in L.A. is a sex shop.
Oh, boy.
So, you know, I thought I was going into a convenience store.
No, you didn't. Liar, pants on fire.
I was going to get pastry and ended up in the vibrator section. And the Dominator scene, the speakers look like the speakers from Back to the Future, except they don't have neon.
Okay, today, get to your point.
Again, he's trying to prove that he's going to sell this system that the kid can't afford. He's going to have him do a whole payment plan, and then he sees he has a pregnant wife and he can't do it. And just the way to watch him amp himself up to be a bad guy and then have to back himself down, just watching the look on his face as he moves toward that, and then he kind of has to soften each time. He's brilliant at that. If Judge Reinhold can do one thing well, it is specifically that.
All right, Judge Reinhold is your good.
Yes.
All right, I wasn't so pigeonholed. I actually said the whole cast was my good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just because I think, I mean, honestly, without Bet, you have zero movie. Because she's the kidnapped one.
Yeah.
And she has to be mean and awful and show you this physical comedy, which I don't know that she's done it before, but I don't even know if to this extent. There was a ton of physical comedy on her part. Even from anything like working out in the shackles to having to wrestle with like Judge Reinhold. It's just one thing after another.
Was this before Big Business?
This was before Big Business, yes.
Because I feel like it was sort of her preparation for that, because she does, I feel like, a lot of physical humor in that, because she's playing the two characters that are very different in their body language.
That's another movie.
Yes.
And also, you're just whomping on me today, boy. Woo. And then also, Danny DeVito, say what you want. I kind of feel like this is his best comedic role for him.
The scene where they're telling him that they've kidnapped his wife and he was planning to kill her anyway, the look on his face as he's...
Zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
One of the several Disney references in the film, and being as this was released under the Buena Vista label, there were several other 80s Bette Midler movies that were under Buena Vista trying to be Disney adult.
She's getting that good Disney money, yo.
That's right. But yeah, the look on his face during that scene as they're telling him that, and he's sort of confused, but he's sort of elated, and though he's like, yeah, I'll do whatever you, okay, yeah, and just his joy is very obvious, even though he's trying to sound like he's frightened to the kidnappers, is brilliant.
Yeah, so it just sounds like you agree with my good. Cool.
It's also easy to forget that Danny DeVito didn't always look like some feral animal that has been out in the woods.
Stop it.
Well, I'm talking specifically about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I'm not saying in his everyday life. I'm saying in that role, he was so foul and dirty and just such a nasty character that, you forget that that's not who Danny DeVito always has been as a character.
No, not at all. He's hysterical.
Yes.
So you're bad?
My bad.
Did you write it down?
Yeah, my bad was a line that Danny DeVito says that still disturbs me every time I hear him say it. Or every time I think about him saying it, it was him talking about wanting to have sex with his mistress, and he says, "How about a poke in the whiskers?" And I just cringe every time I hear that.
And now we can't unhear that. Thank you for nothing.
You're Thank you, everyone.
Nothing.
Yes, you're all welcome.
My bad was the fact that the DVD transfer in the very freaking beginning is a piece of shit.
Yeah, it's terrible.
What the fuck, Buena Vista?
Yeah, the DVD transfer looks like someone dragged it behind their car for a while before spooling it up.
It's time to redo it.
Yeah, it's looking rough.
You made a shit ton off this movie. Redo it. And it was during the credits, and the credits need their love.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
All right, you're ugly.
My ugly would have to be that there wasn't enough of George the Animal Steel in the movie.
I would ask you what that shit is or what that was, but you want to know what? I feel like that's a 20-minute explanation.
It's a short one. He was in...
Wait. Note. Please, everyone, please note what just happened right there. He basically went ahead and set that shit up so that he could respond to it to himself instead of just explaining it. Everyone, this is what I'm living with on a fucking daily basis. But go ahead. Please explain to us, Parry. And then I come off like the bitch. This is the thing. Go ahead. Please explain to us.
That's why I set it up that way, of course. No. George the Animal Steel is a wrestler who you see in one scene on the television, and he played Tor Johnson in Ed Wood. And as you know, I love the movie Ed Wood. And
Never seen it.
We tried to watch together on a plane, and it was not a good time to watch it. But anyway, he plays Tor Johnson, a wrestler, in that movie, and he's fantastic.
Wow. I didn't want to talk, like, you're such a fluffy ugly.
Well, how about there wasn't enough Phil Hartman? You hear him off screen as an announcer on the television.
No, also still fluffy.
So what was your...
So my deep, dark, ugly is the fat shaming that basically was the underlying theme of the entire movie.
Yeah.
Pretty much Danny DeVito doesn't want his wife because she's ugly and fat. And she works out the entire time she's enslaved so that she could be this skinny model or be like a skinny model.
And he's so impressed at the end at how thin she is.
That he kind of wants her back.
Yeah, but it seems like in every other 80s movie, it seems to be, in a lot of the ones we've reviewed, it has been the comic relief in the movie. So,
yeah.
Speaking of, actually, there was an incident today where on a plane, some guy was texting nasty things about the woman he was sitting next to. He was basically saying she was a fatty, and some guy who saw what was happening told the guy, get out of the seat, we're changing seats. You're not sitting next to her, and change seats with her. So it was actually sort of chivalrous and nice of the guy to actually get rid of this jerk who claimed he was a comedian. But yeah, told him to get out of the seat because he was texting nasty things about the woman he was sitting next to. So...
That's super rude.
Yeah. So, that and Kevin Smith and all those things are all
dead.
Modern examples of fat shaming, unfortunately.
Well,
so
now I feel like, I won't go there.
Which is, my theory about what was going to happen at the end of the film was that they were going to open up a line of gyms where what they do is they kidnap you and lock you in the basement and just play workout television until you decide to work out and lose some weight, and that was going to be their big whole business idea that was going to that they were going to do. I thought they might do that at the end. So.
No, and it's supposed to be rectifying the empowerment of women, and so that women don't get controlled by men. No, that's not what the end was supposed to be at all.
And they get all of DeVito's money.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right, because they get it all back.
It must have been really horrible to be locked in a basement in the 80s because there were only like 4 TV stations and they all played aerobics during the day.
I guess. All right, so production notes with Parry. Can I just do the quick rundown and then you can have the floor?
Yes, please.
Okay. Super quick rundown, directed by Jim Abrams. Oh my God, maybe I shouldn't do the rundown. Directed by Jim Abrams, David Zucker, and Jerry Zucker, the Zucker brothers.
Yes, a force of the 80s.
Produced by Michael Peisner. Is that right?
I believe so.
Peyser. And written by Dave Launer. Music by Michael Colombier, because he's French. It's not Colombier. I think it's Colombier. I think that's right. It was released on June 27th, 1986, running time of 93 minutes. Check this. Their budget was $9 million, made over $71 million at the box office.
I'd say that was a hit.
Yeah, I'd say that was a hit too. And
which makes it especially funny that Danny DeVito supposedly called Bette Midler after the premiere, wants to congratulate her on on the movie, and then to talk about how it was the worst movie ever and their careers were doomed.
Nope, got a 94 on Rotten Tomatoes. Just saying, because it really is comedic awesomeness.
I would agree that it is a straightforward comedy. It is nothing. It pretends to be nothing more, and it just isn't. But it's great fun, and there are lots of little silly extras, like the police playing tennis on Danny DeVito's tennis court at one point while they're trying to figure out the kidnapping, and just little things like that were fun and interesting. Oh well.
No, you're good.
I'm on.
You're
yes,
on.
I'm
You're on. You have the floor. Everyone, feel free to take a nap as LeVar Burton. Parry Silcox reads to you in his very deep, soothing voice.
Well. First of all, I would like to say that...
And if I fall asleep...
Did you know who was originally cast to be Barbara Stone? Actually cast, not considered. instead of Bette
Oh,
Midler.
shit, got fired?
Because of artistic differences, as
Shelley
they always
Long?
say. Madonna.
That would have made no sense.
No, not really. I don't think it would have worked at all. So, but yep, she was apparently cast originally and then had creative differences with the director. So,
which director? The Zucker brothers or Abrams?
It does not say specifically which director.
Which director, you guys? Somebody dig that up.
I know. We really need to know. Yeah, it was actually supposedly based, some have said, on an O. Henry story called The Ransom of Red Chief, which is about some kidnappers take the 10-year-old son of a businessman, but he's such a little terror that they end up taking him back. But the writer has claimed that it was actually based on the Patty Hearst kidnapping. So that's where the genesis of the idea came from for him. So, yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And speaking of, the writer of the film actually went on to do some other things. This wasn't a one-off. Did My Cousin Vinny and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and Love Potion Number 9, which not that many people like, but Potion Number 9. But I actually do.
I actually do too.
And it's Dale Launer. Let's see. This was actually the last time that the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams worked together. They had worked together a bunch on Airplane, Kentucky Fried Movie. They really had a huge run in the 80s, Top Secret, and this was their last. And it's very different. It's not that crazy joke-a-minute style that's, just very farcical and over the top. This was a very different type of movie for them. The Zucker brothers went on to do a number of things, and including Ghost being one of theirs. And Abrams did more with Bette Midler. He actually directed Big Business.
Interesting.
And Hot Shots, Part 1 and 2, or 2. So this was one of a number of similar films for Bette Midler, where she played different characters, but they all seemed to share like a common thread. And we already mentioned Big Business, but there was also Down and Out in Beverly Hills was kind of a part of that whole grouping of films.
Yeah, An Outrageous Fortune.
Yeah, exactly. So they all kind of shared that a similar type of feel to them.
I mean, really, it was such a convergence of all these different people.
And in many ways, it was convergence of these writers and directors and actors that all had some huge part in the making of the 80s. Do you think that we've discovered like the lesser known nexus of the 80s? Is this where it all converges?
It's the keystone, right, man. It's the keystone.
Ruthless People. It may not be one of the most well-known of the 80s, but it may really just connect to everything else.
I could see that. I could see how that, you're putting a lot of people at the top of their game together. So maybe it is the keystone.
And speaking of, I think that's a good segue into Soundtrack Smashes.
Soundtrack Smashes! So this soundtrack was pretty freaking loaded, and I have to wonder if the whole genesis of the soundtrack, especially after Flashdance, everybody wanted to create this like blockbuster soundtrack. That's really what the 80s became all about. This one is no exception. So on the soundtrack, you have Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, Mick Jagger, George Benson, just to even name a few. And I think just even that couple that I just named off, it's kind of crazy already. So my personal favorite on the soundtrack is, of course, George Benson. Give me the reason. Because, well, George Benson. I don't even need to qualify that, I think.
For those of us who do not know Benson's discography, could you tell us a little bit more about him?
So George Benson is really notably, in his roots, he's a jazz musician, really. So, but he also gave you a lot of pop singles. So like one of them is Turn Your Love Around. Turn your love around. Dun, 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 dun. So that was in the early 80s. And then you had things like Lady Love Me, Inside Love, Kisses in the Moonlight. And then he was still, active throughout the 80s and a little bit of the 90s as well. And he's just known for for really going ahead and just giving you some really great vocals and musicianship at the same time. So I say check him out. Give him a listen.
So the technical musical term for his type of music would be panty dropper?
Yes. White man, panty dropper would be appropriate.
I just wanted to make sure it was clear in my head that he would be like with a Teddy Pendergrass kind of...
Yes, so definitely in that Teddy Pendergrass, Billy Ocean type of a way, that same genre feel.
Luther Vandross.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that same genre / feel with a little extra jazz in it.
All right. I feel like I am more well-educated now because I only heard the one song and you were like, oh, yeah. I mean, obviously this is the one, and I had no real idea why. The music song was good, but I just didn't get it the same way. So now I do.
Oh, George Benson?
Now I understand.
You never heard of George Benson before?
I had heard the name, but think about what I was listening to.
Oh, yes. Oklahoma. Surrey with a fringe on top? No?
That one, not by choice. That was by my mother's desire.
I know, you're listening to Huey Lewis in the News.
Pretty much.
Which is probably influenced a lot by these said artists that we were speaking of. I'm just saying.
It's one of those things you do discover as you go along in life, is that a lot of your favorite artists were influenced by others who you may not even know about, and then to discover them is always a joy, to be like, oh yeah, I see where they were influenced or where they got it, and sadly sometimes where they stole it.
Yes, sadly sometimes.
Yes.
So which one
Going
is
back to that conversation about white artists and black art, we won't go there. But...
This turned very political very quickly. So, what's your favorite soundtrack, Smash?
Well, I actually listened through the whole CD.
Oh, that's very good of you.
Yes, because I really was interested because, it's one of those things that was big in 80s and 90s was to have a lot of these soundtrack songs that were sort of just shoehorned onto the soundtrack and you heard them in the background for a few seconds. And you just really never knew where they fit into the movie or what they were. So I was trying to listen to these completely out of context of the film. And I really found there were a number on there that I liked. I wouldn't say that they were my pick, but
Okay, what's your pick? Or are you going to tell me all the ones
I'm going to get there. I was just going to say that, No Say in It by the Machinations, I thought was interesting. I enjoyed it. And... Dance Champion by Kool and the Gang. I love Kool and the Gang. It kind of sounded like a takeoff, at least lyrically, of Dancing Queen. I mean, it doesn't sound at all like ABBA, but I feel like it's kind of the same idea. And even some of the others like Don't You Want My Love by Nicole McLeod, that it has some cool synth in it. And she's good. It sounds a lot like a lot of other songs of the 80s, which is probably why it didn't take off here. But you were telling me that she was big in Europe.
Yeah, so it's funny. In my former life, I worked as an office manager for an entertainment group. And Nicole was one of the acts that we would book on occasion, and she actually was she is an international superstar. You guys might know her as Lily McLeod from the X Factor in about 2013, I think. She made it to the top 8 and then I think got cut after that. But yeah, so I know Nicole, and she's a pretty cool person, and kudos to her. I did not necessarily understand her catalog at that time, but I was like, hey, I know that name. I know that voice. And sure enough, it is Nicole / Lily McLeod at her best.
Very cool. And like I said, an enjoyable song, very 80s, but fun. And, though it comes down to Ruthless People, which is, of course, the title track, and it's a fun song by Mick Jagger, of all people, who apparently hated that animation sequence at the beginning. He thought it was terrible. But
it's freaking amazing.
It's awesome. And the animator actually has it up on YouTube, and she comments on like, hey, Mick Jagger hated this. But I think it's great.
Maybe he was on drugs.
I would say that that's probably a consistent theme, but I don't want to get sued. So I said it without saying it. But, it may be an obvious choice, but I always really liked Billy Joel's Modern Woman. And here we go with the convergence of the 80s again, that it's a Billy Joel song.
Woman.
I I feel like it says a lot about what, women had become in the 80s and how that was very confusing to a lot of people, both people who are more traditional, men and women, as well as men of the era, just because this is not what their mothers were or what what their fathers taught them to want. This is a whole different type of woman, and I don't understand this. And I've always liked the song. And it fits in with the film as well, but I admit I think I've just always liked it separately. So I'm still gonna take it as the top because I think it works here too.
So I mean, he just loves women all the time, Billy Joel.
Yes, it has been argued though that a lot of those lyrics actually are more misogynistic than we think.
Really?
Yeah. There's actually.
No, but what about his other songs like "She's Got Away" or "Just the Way You Are"?
There have been some interpretations of those lyrics that were not so flattering, and I saw the point of the argument. I thought that there was some validity to it, but I still like Billy Joel. I still like the songs, but
I don't think he's misogynistic.
I didn't feel it in this song, although again, the argument has been made for many that there is that it's subtle sometimes a little more overt, but that it's there. It's actually a fun podcast to listen to. I think it's called "We Didn't Start the Podcast."
Oh, right, the one about all the Billy Joel.
Yeah, it's Adam Ragusa, and I forget her name. That was the one who was the Billy Joel fan, and he's not in there. It's pretty harsh in some sections, but it's very educational, and I learned a lot about the songs and about some of Billy Joel's personal life that is questionable, as with many artists that we love, that we probably.
I don't think it's I don't read that as misogynistic at all.
Not this one in particular. I don't remember their discussion of this song, but again, I always liked the song, and I think it, in some ways, was part of my shaping of what I wanted in a woman in terms of strong and intelligent and in charge of her own things and capable of being in control and a leader. And, my mother modeled a lot of that. But, of course, that I think, like I said, the message in it, that's how it always struck me, was that these were desirable qualities, even if some men just don't get it and can't handle it.
I'm so sorry that you married the polar opposite. I'm just kidding.
Hardly.
Oh, the banter.
So,
and the flattery. Thank you, honey.
Certainly. Looking here at it again in front of me, looking at all the people on this soundtrack, and even Bruce Springsteen is on here with Stand On It, which is not his best song, but again, convergence of the 80s. I really think this is the keystone.
Yeah, I think they figured it out. I think they figured out the formula. I think they definitely just figured it out.
Oh, and even the editors on the film, if you want to talk about the convergence, you've got one who was like amazing and worked on things like...
So the other one wasn't amazing?
Well, that's the funny part. It had two editors, and one of them worked on... he won 2 Oscars, was nominated for 5, and he worked on Back to the Future, Coal Miner's Daughter, and Back to the Future actually 1, 2, and 3, Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Who's this awesome individual?
This would be Arthur Schmidt. But then the other person, Gib Jaffe, edited They Live, which is super campy, but I would not call it a great work. Rambo First Blood Part 2. And
well, we already know I haven't seen any of the Rambos.
Rocky 3.
Or the
and
Rockies.
So a lot of more questionable movies of the 80s, but they're the ones... Oh, Breakin', he edited.
That's all right. He could edit Breakin'. Breakin's awesome. You haven't seen Breakin'.
Yeah, we're going to get there, so I might revise my opinion. But I will say I liked the movies that he edited for entirely different reasons than Mr. Schmidt. So, right. But again, these connected to so many other parts of the 80s that I think they really are at the center of the spider web here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that you just get a lot of great acting at a place where they all were sort of figuring it out and directing and a place where they were all sort of figuring it out, and the soundtrack at a place where they finally figured out that the soundtrack can be just as big as a money grabber as anything else, and it's worth it to go ahead and invest in the soundtrack.
You know, in talking about all of this great 80s-ness and the convergence of it, why did you decide to show me this particular movie?
It was so surprising that you hadn't seen this movie to me. And I guess it's because I just think it's quintessential best part of Danny DeVito and Bette Midler. I really do. The comedy is at such a different level. I mean, you see Danny DeVito in other roles, but there are smaller roles. He's like the side guy, like in, Romancing the Stone, Jewel of the Nile. While he's still a part of the trio, it's a trio, and he's not really the main dude,
War of the Roses.
War of the Roses. Yeah, it's the same awesome comedy trio, but he's sort of like the sidekick. He's the afterthought. He's not necessarily, now it might not work without him, but he's not necessarily the focus. And in this, he was definitely not an afterthought. He was definitely one of the main leading man.
And does an incredible job of it. Because like I said, it's hard to be hateable and yet a little bit likable, and he pulls it off really well.
Right. And in this movie, Bette Midler doesn't take herself so seriously. I think she's just freer and looser than a lot of the other roles that she's done. And I mean, what's not to love about Bette Midler?
I think everyone in this film brought out the best in each other. All of their interactions were just so perfect. Like we were saying about Helen Slater, she just had that sort of wide-eyed, terrified
doe look.
Yeah, that she has at the beginning of Billie Jean, but it's different. It is still a different deer in the headlights look. She seems a little more trailer park streetwise from the beginning, whereas in this one she just seems completely dumbfounded that this has happened, that they've done this, that she was
it's a different level of
in
naive.
The first place. Yes, it is, and it
is what other actresses lack when they play the same role. Sorry,
I know exactly who.
We don't need to repeat it.
I was going to say, refer to, you haven't seen what? Episode 1 for clarification on about to whom Joelle is speaking.
Or don't, and it's okay.
Well, I'm glad you showed it to me, and it brought back a memory that I hadn't thought about in a while. It was a memory of Jan de Bont, who was the cinematographer for this. In fact, he was the cinematographer on a lot of 80s
Sounds
movies.
Like production note.
Including...
It sounds like a production note.
Well, it is, but I'm summing it up with this story of the fact that he did Who's That Girl and The Look of Love video. He did Die Hard and The Hunt for Red October. Just a ton of 80s movies that he was the DP for. And then he directed some movies in the 90s that you might know. Speed and Speed 2 and Twister. But the story goes, when I got to LA, I was looking for jobs other than my camera store job. And a guy that I knew worked at Jan de Bont's company and said, hey, come and interview for a job. And so I put on a shirt and a tie, and I drove over to the offices, and I went in, and I was meeting with the handlers beforehand. Before you could meet Jan, you had to meet the people. And so they're looking at me and they're like, so why are you wearing a tie today? I was like, because I'm going to an interview and that's just kind of how I was taught. Well, have you heard that we're an uptight company? Do you feel like this would be a tie environment? And I was like, well, I don't know. I haven't worked here. I don't know what it is. Like, well, the tie makes us nervous. And actually, we'd be more comfortable if you went home and changed completely, not just the tie, but the shirt. Come back more relaxed before you meet Jan. And so they were just somehow terrified that he would get this image that it was getting out there that his company, Blue Tulip, I believe it was somehow an uptight company that you would need to wear a tie to. And so I came back without the tie and I interviewed for the job. And Jan was very nice and got to speak with him for a little while about his company and his movies. But I did not get the job. I think it was actually a master's student in film that got the job, and it was driving a delivery vehicle around with different items in it. So I'm not too sad I didn't get the job, but yeah, that was my Jan de Bont story.
Your Jan de Bont rant.
And it has caused everyone to yawn. So with that, how about you shamelessly plug us, Joe?
Sure. We would love it if you please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on whatever media platform you're currently on. If you would leave us a review, that really helps other people see us as well as rating us. And of course, when you subscribe, you get to make sure that you don't miss an episode. Sorry. Also check out our website, youhaven'tseenwhatmovie.com, for other tidbits and such. And then social media, Insta, Facebook, Twitter, at You Haven't Seen What Movie. And let us know what movies you think we would be interested in reviewing. And also, please share your own stories of how these movies impacted you. We love, love, love going ahead and giving feedback and posting it on our social media if you would like us to. So we're down to do all of those things and share your stories. And hopefully come to a place where we can actually even create like little mini-sodes where we're sharing your specific stories about one of our podcasts and about a specific movie and what it really meant to you. I think that'd be totally cool.
Yes, we'd definitely love to have some conversations with listeners. And next week we're going to be at MegaCon, so who knows? Maybe we'll have some interesting stories of some of the personalities we're going to meet there to share on our next episode.
MegaCon in Orlando, Florida.
Indeed, that's the one.
That's the one.
Until then... Oh, I got it reversed.
No, fool. It's the wrong order. I'm divorcing him after this show. We're done. Not even 10 podcasts in. We're done.
Gee whiz.
Gee whiz, nothing, Ralphie.
Meatloaf.
Oh, no, it's Randy. That's who you're playing? Eat your potatoes. How does the piggy go, Randy? I think we should end just like that. I don't think it can really get any better. Thank you all so much for bearing with us
as we get back in the swing of things. And listening to our
total freaking craziness called You Haven't Seen What. We appreciate you. We appreciate you guys subscribing. We appreciate all of the interaction that we're getting on social media with you all. We're having a great time doing this. I know it might not always seem like it, but we are having a great time doing this. Remember,
be kind.
Rewind.
Bye.
Bye.